Hey, it's Chris Chico, and today I'm really excited because I'm going to share with you what I consider to be the ultimate real estate lifestyle business. Better than wholesaling, better than local wholesaling, better than virtual wholesaling, better than anything that you have ever seen. And in this video, I'm going to walk through almost a step-by-step course that will detail exactly every single component of this business so that now you can replicate it yourself. And the great thing about this business is that it doesn't require any cold calling, any direct mail, any driving for dollars, any dealing with real estate agents in order to get deals done. And it avoids all of that because what we're doing is we're focusing on the thing that matters most right now, which is online marketing. It's generating motivated sellers using the platforms such as Facebook, TikTok, and Google. I'm going to share with you specifically how we use all these platforms, what works, what doesn't work, which ones you should go after as a beginner, as an experience. It depends on your budget, a lot of different factors. But in this video, we're going to cover all of that. And I'm going to make it so it's crystal clear for you exactly how to implement this particular system and business, because I know that once you do, life will never be the same after that. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. So let's talk about what is the ultimate real estate lifestyle business, a low stress and a high profit business. All right. So what are the components of that? Number one, high profit, meaning, and by high profit, and I'm talking to you if you're listening to this video and you're trying to get this business off the ground. So this is really, really important. Yes, you could make a tremendous profit in this business. You can. There's people out there making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a month. However, in the beginning, you got to get to that 30 to 40K per month consistently, because that's going to change your life. For most of you, that kind of money, you can quit your job, you can have your spouse quit your job, and now you can do whatever you want to do. So we're going to focus on that, and then you can take it wherever you want from there. Flexibility and mobility. We want to be able to operate this business from anywhere in the world, from a laptop. So it could be from your home office. It could be while you're on vacation. It really doesn't matter. The business model is going to be revolve around wholesaling. So we're not going to do fix and flip. We're not going to do creative financing. We're not going to do any of that stuff. Forget about it. Get it out of your mind. And we are going to be doing deals nationwide. So we're not going to be doing deals in your little neck of the woods town or your big town, small town. It doesn't matter what town you live in. Yeah, you might get deals there, but we're looking to do deals all across the country. And our business philosophy is going to be that we're going to be focusing on low-hanging fruit. By that, I mean that we're not going to be in the convincing business. We're not going to be in the, I need to become an expert sales ninja in order for me to have success with this business. No, it's going to be having an overabundance of leads such that then now we're just sifting and sorting, trying to figure out which is a good opportunity, and we're discarding almost the rest. Stress-free operations. Again, we talked about the fact that we want to work with reasonable sellers. So we need a volume of sellers that we can pick and choose from, and we want to create the business in a way that produces as little stress as possible. We want it to be enjoyable, and again, we want a business that allows us to scale the business without increasing complexity. And so, for example, if you are in the business of wholesaling and you're doing cold calling and you want to scale your business with cold calling, then that means you've got to acquire more human beings, and human beings are infinitely difficult people to work with. I mean, if in general, I would say. So we want to eliminate that complexity associated with that. And again, we want an enjoyable business that is also profitable with minimum stress and maximum freedom. And again, we don't want a large team. That's the other part of this whole equation. We want to keep things nice and tight, make sure our profit margins are as big as they can. And we want to make sure that we have a model that is working effectively in a very simple way before we even consider increasing it. So what you want to do is you want to get to that 30, 40, 50, $1,000 per month and have it operating like a machine, like a well-oiled machine with very simple, very minimal moving parts. And then at that point, you could decide, let me see if I might be able to increase the volume on this business. And the lead generation strategy, and we're going to get into into the nitty-gritty details of this, is we want a high lead flow business. We need lots of leads. For a lot of you right now, if you're struggling with real estate wholesaling, the thing that could dramatically affect your situation right now is if you had a crap load of leads. If you had a crap load of leads, you have more opportunities, you get better on the phone. And so, having a high lead flow is one of the most important things. Now, in this business model, we're going to be using online lead generation, specifically Facebook, TikTok, and Google, over other methods such as cold calling, which again require lots of human resources and lots of things in order to make that system work. We want operational efficiency. We want things that are simple, and that's why we're going to be using online marketing. And again, the nice thing about online marketing campaigns is that they're very easy to scale. If you want to, again, if you're doing cold calling, you're doing direct mail, to scale that, you have to acquire more lists, skip trace those lists, get more people on the phones. With online marketing, with Facebook and TikTok, all that's required is for you to go on the interface and change the number. You can literally change the number from $50 to $100 a day, and effectively you have doubled your business. And the tools that we have in our arsenal when it comes to this business are going to be simple. We need a way to manage our leads. I'm going to get into this also further down. A way of communicating with prospects. You could either use a cell phone or you could use a virtual phone system if you're outside the U.S. We're going to be using Zillow for property analysis so we can figure out what a property is worth, and that's very easy to use. And we need a platform for selling contracts. We're going to get into that in a second on the ones that we use in our recommendation. And initially, the staffing on this is going to be relatively simple. It's going to be you. In the beginning, you're going to be the one that's doing the work on the front end, and you're going to be doing that because you need to learn how to operate this business to be able to do deals. And then eventually, if you did want to get somebody else to work with you, and I'll share with you, how that would work, then now you have the ability to manage them because you have to be able to do it yourself. So it would be very difficult to have people coming to me all the time that say, hey, I want to start the business, but I don't want to even know anything about it. Just hire a VA right from the very beginning, and that's going to be problematic. Once you've gotten deals under your belt and once you got this machine going, then at that point, then you would hire a virtual assistants. That would help you with my recommendation is you're going to hire a personal virtual assistant that's going to take off of your plate out of the admin stuff. Then later on, you can hire a lead manager that's going to take care of maybe some of that more rudimentary and labor-intensive follow-up on leads, and take away some of those things. It's almost like you want to be like Beyonce, all right, where all you got to do is step onto the stage with a microphone, do your thing, and everything else is taken care of for you. That would be the end goal and destination with this particular business model. By the way, as you're watching this video, if you would like our help in implementing this, we'll actually set up this entire system for you, show you how to run it, and even partner with you on deals. So hit the link in the description and reach out to us. We'll give you the details. We'll give you pricing, what we can do, what we can't do, and then maybe we can work together. Now back to the video. So you might be asking, well, who is this guy, Cris Chico, and why should I even listen to him? I'm not going to make this a long-winded story. This is me. This is my wife. We're high school sweethearts, my two daughters. We live in South Florida. I was born on the island of Puerto Rico. This is the actual house that I lived in when I moved. When I was living in Puerto Rico before I moved to the U.S. Then I came to live in the U.S. I lived in this tiny shotgun house on Northwest 2nd Avenue in Miami. And I went out and got a degree in accounting just because everybody, at the time, I thought, okay, that sounds like a good idea, right? I'm poor. I need an education. That's what they tell me. And I worked in accounting for a very short period of time, and it wasn't really for me. And I got my real estate license back in the 1990s. And I was selling properties for banks as a foreclosure agent. And then one of the people that was buying most of my deals, he said, hey, why don't you come work for me? And I didn't know what wholesaling was or real estate investing or anything like that. And that's how I got into the business. And I worked with him for a year to eventually go and venture on my own. And that is until I met and found out about, I have never personally met him, but there was a guy by the name of Dan Kennedy who wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Letter. So I was having a hard time in doing marketing. At the time, nobody was doing direct mail. And nobody was doing any sort of direct-to-seller marketing, and I was trying to figure that out. So I got this book here, The Ultimate Sales Letter. Helped me write my first set of postcards. And so these, and I'll show you what those postcards look like in a second. I'm no longer using postcard marketing. But, I am considered the godfather of virtual wholesaling. So if you've ever heard that term, I was the one that came up with that term. In fact, I registered that domain in 2007. I've heard that some people say, oh, I think I invented virtual wholesaling, and they started wholesaling in 2012 and 13. I'm like, hey, buddy, I started wholesaling before 2007, before Google Street View. Right around 2005 is when I was doing virtual wholesaling. A lot harder back then than it is today. And I pioneered the use of these ugly postcards. If you've ever seen these postcards before, back at the time, this was something that was not done, where you would take and this was my idea, is I wonder if I could just take the owner's information and put it into the postcard and put in a lot more like personal information, and then that would increase the response rates, and it did. It's so much so that I ended up having to do 24-hour recorded messages on all these postcards because we get so many calls we couldn't answer them. So I was I think I was the first guy to ever use 24-hour recorded messages. And then eventually those cards stopped working, and I ended up creating what's called the third notice. I did the third notice, final notice. If you've ever seen those postcards, ever used those postcards, I was the one that created that postcard. I see, I see mailing houses all over the place have them, but I was the one. And so that was a postcard. In fact, however, my postcards, I would say, sometimes got a little bit too much attention. They ended up being featured in the news quite often, although I didn't raise my hand and say, hey, that was me. But this, the people get all riled up because, they would be like, oh, I got a third notice, but I never got a first notice or a second notice. And they'd just be like completely going bonkers. However, I left postcard marketing. Why? Because as with all strategies, they come and go, and they just got saturated. And in fact, this was a picture from an article they did in the one of the Palm Beach newspapers. And they showed, there was like an example of why of the market and these investors are going after these private owners and trying to steal their houses, etc. What's interesting is that these were all my postcards and letters. That was my letter and my postcards, etc. And then I transitioned. This was around 2016 when I stopped doing direct mail, and I transitioned into Facebook marketing. And I was pretty much, I think there was only one other guy, an agency that was doing Facebook marketing at the time. I was the only real estate investor, and when I first started, you could no longer do this. But how I got started was we started with these digital bandit sign ads, because at the time you could do zip code marketing on the Facebook, and so I would create these campaigns where I would target the individual zip codes, and then I would put little bandit signs on the sides. And then it would get people's attention. And we were doing amazing with that strategy until Facebook and a lot of these platforms, they got into a lawsuit with HUD, and then they eventually just removed that as an option. And that's what forced us into going nationwide and going wider. And now we target sellers on all the platforms, on Facebook, on TikTok, and also on Google. Now, before I get started in terms of going through all of this material, I'm going to go into, just to make sure we're covering base on wholesaling and making sure everybody's on the same page. So bear with me for 1 second. Now, what I want to get into next is specifically about wholesaling, but also why local wholesaling is saturated and how the nationwide wholesaling model works, and some of the type of deals that we do. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Wholesaling, right? We're not talking about flipping houses. We're not talking about buying and selling real estate. We're really just flipping contracts. It's really more of a sales and marketing and not necessarily real estate, because we're not owning any of the real estate. Now, in wholesaling, step by step, it's, we're finding a property owners that want to sell their property, but they don't want to sell with an agent. So either property needs repairs, inherited the property, they need to sell quickly. Maybe the property can't sell with conventional financing, and they don't want a lot of people going through the house. And so what we do is we contract the property, we search for an investor looking for that exact type of property, and then we sell the investor the contract. We don't sell them the house because we don't own the house. We're selling them the contract by adding an assignment fee to the original price with the seller. So in other words, if we have a contract price with a seller at 100, the property is worth 175. We find an investor looking for a deal, and then we offer them that deal for 115, and they say, yes, I'll take that deal. So and then what happens is we sign an agreement with them to take over that deal called an assignment of contract. And then within 2 to 3 weeks, once the title work is done and everything, sometimes it could be sooner, they will bring $115,000 to the closing. $115,000 total, and then that means that they'll get that part of that 115. The seller will get 100, and then we will get the $15,000. And the benefit to this is that we never put a deposit on the deal. We never needed to take ownership of the property, and the $15,000 goes to us, right? And that's really, really important. We never needed to get a bank loan. Now, you want to make sure you don't get in trouble with wholesaling, because wholesaling is us selling the contract, not selling the property. And we're not selling a property on behalf of someone else. So we never present ourselves as, oh, I'm selling, Mr. Seller, can I find you a buyer? That's a no-no. Why? Because now you're acting as a real estate agent. So that's really, really important. And there are some states where wholesaling does require licensure. For example, in Illinois, there is a license required after you do your first deal. In South Carolina, there is the law there is a little bit complicated. We have to do like a JV/partnership agreement with our end buyer. We can't really assign the deal. Outside of those two states, there are a few other states that have restrictions, and I'm not gonna. I will end up doing a video at some point on just that by itself. But there's workarounds. There's always workarounds. Bottom line is that wholesaling allows you to make a significant amount of money without having to go out and get a license and get a real estate license and be able to just spend a few bucks in marketing and have the possibility of making a significant amount of money back from that marketing. Now, local wholesaling is saturated. And that's because if I'm in Broward County, Florida, which is where I live, and I went out to do wholesaling in this particular area, then I'm going to go and I'm going to try and get a bunch of lists, tax delinquent list, an absentee owner list, a probate list, and a vacant list. And then what happens is that I'm going to do the same thing everybody else does. And these sellers are bombarded with direct mail, with cold calling, with text messages. And it's a bit of a brute force method. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of a volume of activity. And with these, especially with cold calling and text messaging, you are chasing people down. They didn't reach out to you. And so then you have when you call them, they're very combative. They don't really want to talk to you because they never really wanted to reach out to you. It's like when you get a call from a solicitor and you never asked to be contacted by them, you're kind of ticked off about it. And also, so there's a lot of convincing in this particular model when you're doing local wholesaling. And you do a lot. You have to do a lot of work to convince them just that you're legit and that they should talk to you, even before you get into the whole situation about the property. Now, with virtual wholesaling, virtual wholesaling is also saturated, and that's because virtual wholesaling. When I created the concept back in 2007, and I was doing it in 2005, it meant just me being here in Florida and then selecting a market somewhere else. But I am selecting one market somewhere else and then now doing deals there. But I still have to pick one market. I still had to do everything I needed to do with local wholesaling. What I was doing is just maybe if my market was tougher, I was going into another market to try to do the same thing, but I still encountered the same issues that I would encounter in my market, maybe at a lower level. And so, what happens is that big picture, regardless if you're doing virtual wholesaling and or local wholesaling, you're still going to come up with the same problem. And the problem is that local lead generation is difficult. And now you can't really do, now I'm going to talk about online lead generation, but if you said, Chico, why can't I do Google and Facebook and TikTok at the local market? Well, it becomes difficult. Local lead generation in these local markets. If I wanted to do local lead gen here in Broward County, it's very expensive. The cost per lead is very high. And some of the platforms really don't work that well with a very confined audience. For example, with TikTok, it barely produces any leads when you really zero in and target a relatively small area. So online marketing is difficult when you're dealing with a small geographic area. And so that's why we prefer, and I prefer, and my clients prefer the nationwide wholesaling model. Number one is that we're going to, and bottom line is that the nationwide wholesaling model allows us to generate more opportunity with less risk and be profitable quicker. Now, the leads are going to be cheaper. So, when we target a large geographic area, the lead cost is going to be significantly less. Now, we can target We can't. It's difficult to target very, very, like if you lived in Ohio and you lived in one particular county in Ohio and it was a small county and you wanted to target online marketing. It's gonna be difficult. But you can take the whole entire state of Ohio. You can group Ohio and a few other states and put them all together, and that becomes more viable. So when we're doing any sort of marketing, we're either targeting nationwide, we're targeting the entire 50 states. We're doing DMAs, which DMAs is a way of it's when you're advertising on TV, they divide markets into regions, and so then now it becomes easier for them to identify a population size within the region for a television market, and then be able to appropriately set the rates for that. So that's another option. Then you can also pick states. I can pick Florida, Texas, South Carolina, etc. And my recommendation right now actually is to and it depends on you, but I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to go back to this concept, is to do either nationwide or selection of states, right? And by selection of states, typically I'm talking about somewhere between 17 to 20 states that we're targeting. Now, the great thing about this model is not only are going to be able to get way cheaper leads and way more opportunities, but we're also not having to do any manual labor. That means we can avoid cold calling to find deals. And instead of spending hours on the phone, we have a system that works 24/7 because we set these ads up. And then now these ads are working in the background. And while we're doing something else, Facebook and TikTok and Google, they're going out and trying to find people and bringing those people to us. And again, we use technology to facilitate the business. That means that we don't have to rely on humans, which is always a better proposition, right? Both from a perspective of not being error prone, but also just dealing with humans. It's always very difficult. In addition to that, when we're doing online marketing, and again, the nationwide model demands online marketing, right? You can't do nationwide if you're going to do those conventional tactics, because what are you gonna, like you have the whole entire country to cover, and it's gonna be very difficult. You're gonna have to pick a market, which ends up being that now you're going back to the same problem that you have with the local wholesaling. And but when we're dealing with online marketing, the great thing is that these people reach out to us, right? When we call them, they're happy to hear from us, and they're not apprehensive about you calling them because they're waiting for you to reach out to them, right? So it's a perfect scenario. Now, the other thing is, when we're doing this sort of marketing, right, with a nationwide wholesaling model, the majority of the time we're getting deals in smaller towns. And, first, people are, investors that are brand new in the business, that have hesitancy around that. But we do deals in small towns all the time. In fact, if you look at, this is a Census Bureau a graph here that indicates, in terms of, the actual the population, most of the population in the U.S. is located in small towns, right? And so there's so many of them. There's like, here it shows there's a total of 19,000 small towns, right, in total. And so when we say that, so those are the type of areas that we're getting a lot of deals in. And I'm going to give you some examples so you can see what I'm talking about here. So, for example, this is a deal that we did this is in Fort Meade, Florida. So it is in Florida, but it is, if you notice where the Google Map dot is, it's in a relatively small, small town away from a lot of the major metro areas. And this is the deal that we got here. It was a mobile home that we got, and this is what it looked like. But yet we were able to make $14,000 on that mobile home in that particular area. And here's the interesting thing. When we do this sort of marketing, right, we get leads. And we get leads in places that we never even heard about, but yet they're viable. So even if you were to do the nationwide model and you said, well, I'm going to do direct mail, I'm going to do some of these other marketing tactics and pick a market, chances are you'd miss all these small markets that are gold mines because you would never even consider of them. Here's another one in Swallanoa, North Carolina. Never heard of that Swallanoa before until the lead came in. We did this deal. This is the house here. The house had been abandoned. So what happens with these smaller towns is that the property owners, they don't have a lot of investors chasing after them, so they don't have a lot of options. So we ended up getting this deal. We made $13,000. Here's another deal in Ward, Arkansas, which is north of Little Rock. And this is a population size of 6,300. I think Swanoa was a population of 4,300. So this is 6,300, and we ended up making a $10,000 assignment fee. Here's another one in Terre Haute, Indiana. This is Indianapolis here to the right. Terre Haute is a small town to the west of Indianapolis. Population's a little bit bigger, 58,000, but still considered a relatively small town. And on this particular property, this was the property, and we made $10,000. Here's another one in Bristow, Oklahoma. Again, this is Tulsa is to the northeast of this town. This town has a population of $4,200 people. This was the property. Again, property that was left, and owner didn't have any options, and they saw the ad, and I'll show you what some of the ads look like, and then we made $10,000. And so, I want to just make sure that you understand that the fact that we're going nationwide gives us an opportunity to have access to tiny little pockets and towns and areas that we would have never considered, that there's not that much investor competition, which means that then now it's easier for us. Plus, we're getting these leads at a very affordable cost. I'll actually show you some of these campaigns that we have running so that you can see that, in fact, this is an amazing model for you, especially as a beginner, when you need lots of leads and you want lots of opportunities, but you also don't want to break the bank. So the best way that we have right now to find motivated sellers, and the old way, the best way and the old way. The old way is cold calling, which now you become an annoying pest. Sellers do not in any way want to hear from you. They're upset that you called, and I would be too. Direct mail, postcards and letters, high risk. In order for you to do an effective direct mail campaign, you got to send out a significant amount of mail. I'm talking about at least spend $3,000-$4,000 in direct mail to a list several times to at least have a chance of making that channel work. Driving for dollars, very intensive, just driving around town like a lunatic, looking at a bunch of properties and trying to find deals that way. MLS, dealing with real estate agents, never really a fun thing to do. I was a real estate agent, still hold an active real estate license. You don't need one, but that gives you the right to make fun of real estate agents. So don't get upset if you're an agent. In addition to that, when you're dealing with agents, there's a lot of competition. You have to put up deposits. It's difficult to wholesale. And the new way really is using Facebook, TikTok, and Google. Everyone is online. And so should your business also as well. If you're not online in terms of your real estate business, then you're really way behind. There's less risk. You can get started with a campaign and only spend $20 a day. And then tomorrow, you're going to spend another 20. But the only reason you spent 20 tomorrow is because you spent 20 today and Facebook gave you some leads. And you're like, oh, this is pretty good. I like this. I like this is working. I like how this is working. So I'm going to give it more money, which is a lot easier than, say, spending $2,000 on a direct mail campaign and hoping and praying that you got the right list, the right postcard, that the phone number's right, and all that other stuff, right? So it's very risky, some of these propositions here. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that if you're cold calling, you got to make sure that you don't call anybody on the do not call list, that and you get into trouble if you do that, and they can sue you. So there's a lot of risk with that. It's easy to scale because you just change the number on a campaign. You literally log on to your campaign, and if you're spending $50 today and you want to spend $75 tomorrow, you just change the number, and that's it. You have effectively scaled your business, and so that means that there's less labor intensive. And again, I want to reiterate that the only way to do nationwide is through online lead generation. That is the only way to be able to do nationwide wholesaling. Let's talk about some of the principles and the mindset required in order to be an effective advertiser when it comes to your real estate wholesaling business and to really embrace this concept. Number one is you have to believe in that there's three people that have all the customers that you would ever want, that have all the potential that your business that you'd want to generate with your business in terms of money and income, everything. There's three people that have it. It's Google, Facebook, and TikTok. And right now, today, you could tap into those individuals and be able to not only be able to start your real estate business, but to be able to grow it as well. Number two is that marketing is superior to tactics, including real estate. It is my opinion that you have two options, right? You can either be the most amazing real estate investor that ever walked the face of the earth, 15, 20 different ways to slice a deal. Or you could be an amazing marketer. In other words, you're not that great of an investor. You may know one or two ways to kind of slice a deal, but you're really good at bringing in a lot of leads. I guarantee you this, you would make more money as a great marketer than you would as a real estate investor, because I met a lot of investors that know a ton of ways to slice a deal, but they're not making any money. And so that's the thing you have to consider. And again, the one that generates the most opportunities in this business is the one that is going to make the most amount of money. I just realized that I never turned on the lights in the back, but I'm going to turn them on now. Maybe I should, just to show you what those look like. Now, you want to be, the next principle is that you want to be a welcome guest and not an annoying pest. And doing inbound lead generation, where you're having people see your ads and then they reach out by filling out a form, and now they're expecting to hear from you. Now you are a welcome guest. You are no longer an annoying pest. And when you call them up, what's important is that it's a warm conversation. It's, hey, this is Cris with whatever your website is, and you filled out a form on our website requesting an offer on your property. And I'm calling you back to get more information and see if we might be able to make you an offer and if your property qualifies. You have a minute? And they say, yes, I remember doing that. And now off to the races you go. Cold calling is chasing people, right? You need to overcome a lot of resistance. They're like, who are you? How'd you get my number? Blah, blah, blah. And it's hard to get a price from somebody. If you ever done cold calling, you know that what do they tell you? Well, you called me. Why don't you make me an offer? Versus online marketing, it's easy just to say, what are you asking? And on our forms, we ask for the price right there on the form, and then they tell us. And also, cold calling is very competitive because everybody's targeting the same list, and those lists are relatively small. They're all targeting lists in the same, major metros, because they don't know anything about these small towns. And so in the end, it becomes a very competitive endeavor. Now, the other principle that you would, as the mindset of an advertiser that you would have, is that you prefer to use money to generate leads versus time. Right. So so there's a negative, right? In that if you want to use these tactics, you have to spend money on marketing. And so, outbound marketing, when you do cold calling and when you do these, driving for dollars, then you're using your time. And the challenge with that is that if you get those to work, at some point you have to leave them and start from scratch on getting something like this to work. And so it is my contention then, why not start with something and make the sacrifice, do whatever you need to do to, figure out your budget so you can spend money on marketing, because then when that works, then now you don't have to, you can stay there. Because if you make Facebook and TikTok and Google work, then you, as a beginner, you don't need to leave there. You don't need to start over. Whereas if you're doing driving for dollars, you get some deals, and now you want to, you want to scale. Now you got to go and find something else to do, because that is limited because of it's a manual labor intensive. And then, ads are scalable without humans. And so that's the other part of this. And I mentioned that many times because I think it's important, in that you set up a campaign, and we have campaigns that have been running for months, untouched, continually bring us leads each and every single day. And we don't have to do anything with them. We don't have to go pull a list. We don't have to, deal with, auditing calls and dealing with cold callers that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or maybe they're calling for you and two other investors, and you can't figure out why they're not, giving you leads, and that's because they're not really working the hours that they said they're working, and all the other issues that come with that. And the bottom line is that more leads is the solution to most problems in your real estate business, right? Because if you're not great at sales, if you have more leads, that means you get to practice. That means that you get better much faster. More leads will help you get better. And more leads equals more deals, which means that the more prospects that you get in front of, the higher the chance of you getting a deal. And so with some of these other marketing tactics, it's a relatively slow process. And so when you embrace the mind of an advertiser, you embrace all these concepts, and you understand that, yeah, this is the 100% what I want to start with, because it's where I'm going to end up in. And so why not start there? And then I can scale to the moon, from there after I get my first couple deals. All right, so let's discuss which is the ad platform that is best for you to start with to find motivated sellers. And look at that, I turn on the lights right behind me. Should have done that earlier, but I can't record the video. Too exhausting. So let's talk about Facebook, where they talk about each platform individually, the pros and cons, and then I'll give you my recommendation. Facebook for motivated sellers. This is the one that I started with. It's funny. A lot of people are like, oh, I just discovered Facebook ads for motivated sellers. And I'm like, I just discovered the newest thing. And I'm like, are you serious? I've been doing this since 2016. This is old news. This is like child's play. And there's not really, there's agencies that are running ads on Facebook. But when to look and to say, hey, I want to know, an investor, an actual investor wholesaler that knows the real estate investing business inside and out, and knows how to run ads and does and runs ads every single day and month for his own business, producing deals, you're there's nobody else. I mean, there's just me, and there's a handful of people that maybe qualify, but they don't know all the platforms like I know all the platforms. All right, I'll leave it with that. So let's talk about the pros. Facebook is great for beginners. All right. You can get started right away. As soon as you can create an account, get everything going. First day, bam, you got leads coming. Like there's basically day one. If somebody tells you, hey, you need like 2 weeks for the account to warm up, to eventually get leads, I need you to run away. Hold your wallet, hold your credit card, grab your wife, your kids, and run as fast as you humanly can. Very little maintenance required. I mean, I have campaigns that have been running forever, for months and untouched, and they continue to produce leads, right? It's easy. Like you can use Facebook's own internal lead system, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, to collect the leads. So that means that from a technology standpoint, and a few other things, it's an easier platform to work with because of that. I already mentioned you get leads starting on day one. It is an easier interface than Google. For example, Google is very complicated. Facebook and TikTok are very similar interfaces. And with Facebook, you can start off with a budget of $15 to $20 per day. This is where I recommend going nationwide. And that way you can generate a lot of leads, especially if you're brand new. Not every lead is going to be good. Like, I'm not telling you like, oh my God, these leads are going to be amazing. You're going to be like, oh my God, Chico, I've never seen leads so good. Like, you're going to have some turds in the leads that you're going to get, but it is what it is. And that's how it works. But you will get, you'll get the turds, but you also get the good stuff. And you'll make the good stuff work. I was a little bit dark there. I didn't realize that. Now you can see me in all my glory. All right, cons. Cons is that it's difficult to make it Facebook and TikTok, very difficult to make it in a small geographic region. And so like if you're targeting a city or a county, don't recommend it. Now you need a higher volume of leads to get a deal versus Google. So it's a balancing act, right? Because with Google, say a lot of people say, hey, we love Google pay-per-click, only takes 15 leads in order to get a deal. With Facebook, you might need as much as 35 leads. But then again, on Google, you're paying significantly more per lead, and it's less a forgiving platform versus Facebook. You need more leads, but you're not going to pay that much for leads. I mean, you got to pay, sometimes you could pay as much as $10 or $15 a lead or less. And so depending on your targeting, there's a balancing act there, but I think it's better for beginners because of the fact that the lead cost is lower, and you need to practice as a beginner. The cons is it's difficult to set up initially. So it's one of those platforms. It's like driving a car, right? When you're driving a car every single day, is a rather easy endeavor. You put in the key, you push a button, you put on the radio, you put on the AC, and off to the races you go, right? But if I ask you to build a car, you would be like, you know what, I'm going to take the bus because it's difficult. So building it itself and putting a platform together and all the pixels and everything to make sure it works correctly is a little bit cumbersome. But once you do get it correct, taking over that is like as if you bought a car and they give you an owner's manual. You're like, I got it. I'm good. So not that much. Requirements. You need a website. You all should have a website, right? Regardless of whatever platform you're on, you need a website. So when you call a seller, you say, hey, this is Cris with, and you tell them the name of your website. And then now, it gives you instant credibility and they can look you up, and then you have an email from that website. That's a professional, you're going to give them a better sense of you being professional in the business. And so you definitely need a website. And by privacy policy, that at some point on your website, and I'm just going to use generic domain.com, that you have a link that shares your privacy policy. And then because you're going to need that link for Facebook and for TikTok and all these platforms. You're going to need images. I'll share with you some of the images that we use, video creatives. And you need an account at Zapier.com in order to connect everything and then receive leads. Cost per lead nationwide is 15, 17 states, about 25 per lead. But many times, I can show you here an ad account that I have that this is a campaign that we just started today, actually. It just started today, and we have 3 leads, $6.56. It's actually less than that because we just got another lead in, and it hasn't registered in the interface. So $6.56 per lead, and these are good lead submissions, inherited properties, etc. So you could get leads as low as that. I always like to work a worst case scenario. So if you get leads at $15 a lead, those are great numbers, and so that's Facebook. Now let's talk about TikTok. TikTok, less competition than Facebook. A lot of the majority of the agencies out there that say the majority of the agencies for real estate investors, they're all pretty much Facebook. Some of them are Google, but a lot of them are Facebook. So you have a lot of advertisers on Facebook. However, before I forget, the way to circumvent that is you got to do videos. Videos, a lot of the people out there are just doing images. If you do videos, then you'll get a much better quality lead. Plus, you're not going to have as much competition. And I'll share with you what we do on video in just a second. The quality on TikTok is very good. So we can get a hold of everybody rather quickly. So it's a high contact rate for the sellers. Similar interface to Facebook. They basically just copied Facebook's interface. And so it's a little bit less, it's definitely less refined than Facebook, right? Facebook is like the Ferrari. And then TikTok is like the Honda Civic with the turbo boost behind it, right? It still works, gets you there fast, produces results, but it's a little bit clunky on the way there. Now, TikTok, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, is they also have an internal system of collecting leads. So that makes it easier for you from a standpoint of not needing a converting landing page. And I will show you what I mean by this in a second too as well. So I'm just trying to, as I'm going through this, I'm covering things here, but at the same time, I'm letting you know, hey, I'm going to cover these other things shortly here in this video. So I'm just kind of stair-stepping into everything. Cons, it can be difficult to get your first campaign producing. Facebook, you can get the campaign running first, right off the bat, it's producing leads. And then with TikTok, sometimes you got to start off with a few campaigns. You'll spend a couple $100 just to get it going, and then eventually it gets going and it produces great leads. The geo-targeting is limited on TikTok, so you can't really target. Not that we do, but in generally, if you are looking to target, which I don't recommend, like small geographic areas, it's difficult because TikTok doesn't really have the same targeting and coverage options. They just do nationwide or big audience. And if you do the nationwide or select multiple states, then that's going to work anyway. Requirements is, there's no images on TikTok. It's all video. So you got to do videos, and the videos have to be well scripted and punchy and particular framework we find. And so I am going to share with you what that framework is here in this video. And the cost per lead is generally about the same as with Facebook. So $15 and $25 to $30 per lead for 17 states. A question that I get asked all the time is, Chico, but TikTok is for young people. There's no sellers there. And, the fact is that there are sellers demographically. So this is one of our accounts that has accumulated quite a bit of conversions. So these are the conversions on the left-hand side. So almost 320 conversions. Out of all the conversions, this account probably has like 600 conversions maybe. Out of all these conversions, look how many of them are for people over the age of 55, the majority of them. Then 45 to 54, 35 to 44, then it trickles down, right? But the majority of them are here. So just want to show you this, that make sure that you understand that our demographic, older sellers, are on TikTok 100%. Finally, let's talk about the big one, which is Google Ads for motivated sellers. Now, there's a couple of things, because now things are different. It used to be that Google was only search, but now there's YouTube ads, there's Performance Max, there's Demand Gen. So with PPC, and that is search, which is what most agencies do, is you do get high intent leads. However, those high intent leads come at a cost. So you're going to pay a lot of money for these leads. If you're doing search, even if you're doing nationwide, it's very easy for you to and the Google accounts, and I'm going to explain to you this here in a second, but they require a lot of ad spend relative to Facebook and TikTok in order to get going. Now, keep in mind is this, that even though search, for example, it used to be where somebody would take and click on, go to google.com, search, and then leave and then do something else. But there was no social media, so that was the only way that you could access that particular customer, right? But now what they do is they go and type in "Sell My House Fast," and what do they do next? They go on Instagram, they go on TikTok, and now we can find those people on Instagram and on TikTok and pay significantly less money than Google when it comes to search. Now with Google, there's these other type of campaign types that are being used. Not a whole lot of competition from real estate investors, but they are definitely more difficult to get going. The platform itself, and I'll get into that in a second. So the pro on this is that, with Google, you've got a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to campaign types, targeting audiences. And keep in mind is that Google, out of all the platforms, Google knows the most about you. Because Facebook may track, like when you go visit a particular site here or there. But think about the secret stuff that you search on Google that you don't want anybody to know. Well, Google knows that stuff, okay? So those are the positives. The negatives is that it is a very complex platform. Lots of stuff, hard to find, and it's easy to spend a lot of money quickly and not get anything out of it. And then now the account, it requires a higher ad spend to get going. You got to invest money into the platform in order to get data, in order to be able to have be able to start receiving leads at an affordable cost. Meaning that you'll start receiving leads, and then they'll be really high, and then little by little they'll come down. But you got to withstand that. So if you're on a limited budget as a beginner, then it'd be very difficult for you to do that. Best when used with Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager and combining all that together. But then again, it increases significantly the layer of complexity and putting all that stuff together. Now, high competition in search and PPC. We talked, there's a lot, and when you're talking about search on Google, then what happens is that you have a lot of people competing for the same prospect. So the person will go in and say, "Sell my house fast," type it into Google. They'll see one website, fill in the information, go to the next website, fill in that information. So you have to be fast on those leads. Not necessarily on these here, but on the search, you have to be really, really fast. Like calling them within 5 minutes at the most, because otherwise somebody else is going to call them right away after you call them or before you call them. So you got to be on point, and you got to have your sales game on. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of money. So that's why I recommend, when you talk about Facebook and TikTok, it's interruption driven. So, if they see your ad, then especially with a video ad, then they may not see another ad for a while, which means that then now you have more time, and they're definitely not going to see the volume of ads that you would, you're not going to be in a competitive state, right, that you would. Our requirements for Google is that you need a converting landing page. Very, very important. Very important. If you don't have this right, you ain't going to make it work. And I see a lot of websites from real estate investors. I see a lot of lot of websites that are cookie cutter, a lot of websites that are just put together because you want to put together a $10 website because you don't want to spend that much money. But in the end, you try to send traffic to that website on Google. You're gonna eat up your whatever money you have for ads. It's gonna go away rather quickly. And again, you need greater technical ability to be able to operate within the Google platform. My final recommendation is this. If you have a low budget of less than $1,500, then you go with Facebook. You can do Facebook if for any reason you've been banned from Facebook before and you don't have the ability, or maybe you hate Zuckerberg, whatever the case is, you can go with TikTok. If you're new and never done a deal before, definitely Facebook and TikTok. If you're not tech savvy, Facebook and TikTok. If you need to target a very tight geo, meaning that you want to, you're like, Chico, I don't care what you say, I need leads in this particular area, then you got to go with Google. Google is going to be the king when it comes to that. But keep in mind is that depending on the area, you're going to spend a lot of money. How much money? On the low side, $150 to $200 per lead. On the high side, I've seen leads as high as $600, $700 per lead in highly populated markets like San Diego, Miami, Florida, etc. If you have more than $3,000 to spend on marketing, Google, you could definitely spend on Google. So Google is going to require, like, if you only had $1,500, forget about Google. But if you said, hey, I can spend $3,000 easily all day long, every single month, then Google is definitely an option, right? But now that doesn't mean that you can't take that money, put it into here, and still get significant returns. So these are always viable options. All right. I'm always in the mindset that you do want a couple running so that you're never dependent on any one particular lead source. You want to have at least, so if you have a $3,000 budget, you can put a certain amount of money toward Google, maybe $2,000 toward Google, and then $1,000 toward Facebook. And so then now, you have both platforms working. However, I don't recommend you doing that simultaneously, meaning that you start with one first, you get that going, get that producing, then you layer in the other one and the one and whichever ones come after that. Now, let's talk about how quickly you can get leads. These are sample campaigns that the screenshots from a variety of different campaigns that we have for our clients that we started, and these are the results after 7 days. This is a nationwide campaign. You can see here cost per result $19, produced 9 leads. This is one targeting states, produced $35. This is one targeting DMAs, $32. So as you can see, the nationwide campaigns will produce lower cost per lead. And the one here, this is one that we just recently started from TikTok. That one has a $29 cost per lead nationwide, over 12 conversions. So generally, nationwide is going to be higher on TikTok, but it will give you, in Facebook, you'll have the lower cost per lead on nationwide, but you'll have more rural areas that will come up, and some of those deals you can't do anything with. Whereas TikTok, you don't have as many rural areas that we'll get with a nationwide campaign, but you will pay slightly more on a cost per lead basis. Now, all right, so let's talk about how to create winning ads. Because the important thing with these platforms is you need to be able to not only mechanically get everything correct, but also have the right creative so that at the end, the prospect, you get the leads, but also you get the right leads, because you also want to be able to call out correctly to the audience to make sure that they're the right people. So let's talk about just some platform requirements, and then we'll get into some of the other details. Platform requirements is Facebook allows you to use images, video, and ad copy. So now, although, the majority of our conversions come from the videos. So, but we do include everything else that's available to us to maximize our efforts on that platform. But know that video, if I was to name like the most important part of it, is going to be the video at this time right now. Now it used to be different about a year ago, but now it's pretty much video. TikTok, videos only. So now they are rolling out some campaigns that include images. We haven't tested those, but for right now, the platform is pretty much driven by video. And then now Google, there's some nuances there. There's search, which is only text. There's YouTube, which is videos, but now those videos are, 16 by 9. There's different types of videos depending on the placement. So if I do a video for YouTube to run an ad, there's a lot of considerations that I need to have. And so, number one is 16 by 9, which is that widescreen video, the one that you normally see everybody pretty much on YouTube. Then you have the vertical, which is the ones that are the reels, right? The shorts, on YouTube. And then you also have square videos, right? Which are different placements altogether. And then the campaign types, PMax and Demand Gen, take all the different assets and put them all together. So in a PMax campaign, you're going to have text. For the search ads, you're going to have images. You're going to have the video types, all the video types. And so, there are a lot of requirements on Google in order to really fully use that platform to the best you can. Talk about some principles for ads. Number one is that calling out to the audience. And I'll share with you a script. I think I have the script here on one of the videos here. Let's see. I believe, I have a video script here. So we'll get into that in just a second. So calling out to the audience, meaning that, hey, are you a property owner do you own a property that needs work and fixing up and you're wanting to sell that property? Or do you own an inherited property? Or do you own a vacant piece of property? Or are you tired of having do you own a property that you want to sell quickly and you're trying to figure out what's the best way to sell that property? You could list it with an agent and take all the time that, make repairs, or you could do this. So like right at the very beginning, calling out to the audience to see so that person knows, should I continue to listen to this or not? High energy, right? So, hey, you got to follow your advice or your doctor, but you got to take some caffeine, okay? You can't sound like you just had some NyQuil and now you're getting ready to record a video and you sound, like you're half asleep. Okay, don't do that. Another principle when it comes to videos is good audio, right? So most of the phone, if you use your phone, and this is what I recommend for most people, just to use the phone that you have, unless you have like an iPhone 4 or iPhone 6. iPhone 12 or above, 12 is a minimum. They generally have good audio, good cameras, so you should be able to be fine with that. I mean, don't go in the middle of traffic and try to record a video. That might not do well, but you do need good audio. Now, you could do a fancy type of microphone like I have here, which is attaches here. But you can buy these microphones that attach to the phone with a cord on Amazon for like $15-20, right? So you don't need anything that fancy, but generally speaking, the microphone that's on the phone itself is going to be good. You want to make lots of ads. The first one you're going to make is going to be horrible, but you got to make more. The more you make, the easier and faster it gets. Yeah, I mean, you're in the car, you're driving, and you're at a light, and you're thinking, "Oh man, I feel like I got an ad in me." Then you just take out the phone and you record it. It's funny because when I'm trying to give you examples of like, here's what the ad would say. It's like I go on automatic Chico ad recording. Like, hey, are you a property owner that has a property that needs work and fixing up, and you're wondering what should I do with that property? Should I list it with a real estate agent, or so like I've recorded so many ads that I just go into this automatic script mode. That's what you need to do. Now you could go and get these done on Fiverr, so you can go and hire somebody on Fiverr and an actor, and we do that so that we can get different avatars. So it's not just my ugly mug. There's a woman, and and all the nationalities, right? Old, young, etc. But at the very beginning, it's very convenient for you to be able to do your own ads. Simply because, if you look at the stuff that you get from Fiverr, they look like half asleep. And so if you think, oh, I'm going to look half asleep, well, hey, would you rather you record the ad half asleep, or pay another guy $100 to record an ad for you, and he's going to look half asleep? So it's better for you to record the ad. But eventually you get better. To edit the videos, we use CapCut, which is a software by TikTok, but you can just download it from the app store, and you can edit them. When I first started using this, I would edit the videos on my phone. So you can do the desktop, and you can buy the premium version, which is like $8 a month. So it's relatively inexpensive, and there's so many videos on YouTube available and showing you how to use it. So this is kind of me recording videos with my bald head. If you have hair, then you might do better than me, right? And then we always put the captions on there, because when you're doing it on a mobile device, the person may not have their audio turned on, and so the captions really are helpful to them. And now with Facebook. I'm going to give you some examples here. Facebook allows you to put headlines in the ad. So, for example, urgent alert for home sellers: ditch repairs, fees, and market madness now. Skip costly repairs and agent hassles. Act fast, homeowners. Ditch the repair headaches, agent fees, and market mayhem today. Sell your home without the hassle. No repairs, no agents, just results. So that's a headline that we're using on Facebook. And then Facebook allows us to use what's called the primary text. So this is an example of an ad. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but it calls out to the avatar and uses emojis. And then you can pause the video and take a look at this, and just gives them quick bullet points. I'll show you in a second how you can have these written by ChatGPT, actually. Facebook images. We use images, and we create them using Canva, canva.com. This is canva.com right here. This is a sample ad, right? You want to make them ugly. Like, I've seen some ads, they're like brownish color, and they look so, like, you got to make it so that people are like, oh my God, look at this ad, it's so ugly. But oh my God, I do want to sell my house. So they got to pay attention. So this is one of the ads here. Here's another one. And again, an ad like this is great because it does call out to the audience. We want ugly houses. We want stuff that needs work and fixing up, etc. Here's another one. And again, ugly house. Here's another one, same thing. So these are very similar to each other. And again, they're like just in your face, ugly. Like, I don't want pretty, I want ugly. I want the ugliest thing I can get my hands on. Now, here's a video script, right? This is a typical video script. The videos here are talking about Facebook, but pretty much videos will work on also all the platforms, right? So work on TikTok, whatever video you create for Facebook, you'll make it work on TikTok. So, do you own the property that needs work and fixing up, and you're wondering what is the best way to get that property sold? So already there, it's calling out to that particular prospect and avatar. Now it goes through. You can list it with a real estate agent. However, it's going to take a while in order to get the property sold. They're going to ask you to make a bunch of repairs. They're going to have a bunch of people coming through the property, and then they're usually a big pain in the butt to deal with real estate agents. So again, hitting the pain points of what they don't want. What about selling it to a cash buyer, someone like me? My name is Cris, and I'm a national property buyer. And we buy properties that need work and fixing up every single month. Now, notice when I read this, I'm using voice inflection. I'm not like, and we buy properties that need work and fixing up and every single month, and we love an opportunity to buy your property. If you sound like that, then you're not going to get any conversions, right? So you have to practice. You have to practice your voice inflection. So it says, hey, and we buy... My name is Cris, and I'm a national property buyer. Wait, let me go back to the previous one. What about selling to a cash buyer, someone like me? My name is Cris, and I'm a national property buyer, and we buy properties that need work and fixing up every single month, and we would love an opportunity to purchase your property. See, that sounds much better. When we buy your property, we're looking to pay you a fair price based on its condition and situation. So I want to tell them, hey, I'm not looking to rip you off. We're never going to ask you. So I say, we're never going to ask you. No, you say, we are never going to ask you to make any repairs to the property. So you can leave it exactly the way it is. It doesn't matter if the property is vacant or if it's occupied. If it's occupied with a tenant, it doesn't matter if they're paying rent or not. If you have stuff at the property, you can take whatever you want and leave the rest behind. We'll handle the details. Bottom line is that we're looking to pay you a fair price for the property and make everything nice and easy for you. And all you got to do is simply click the button that you see along with this video. Submit a few details about your property, and you never know if we just might be the solution that you have been looking for. I know, and I know you're thinking, Chico, you should be like in the, you just won an Oscar, Chico, just for that performance. I know. You don't have to tell me. I flunked out of the what's a class? Now I can't think of it. I was going to tell you a really bad joke, but now I forgot the joke. So there you go. The videos for YouTube are more, you could test both, but on YouTube also we do more like fancy graphics and that sort of thing. But also we also do the videos just like I just shared with you, except for YouTube, primarily. We're going to record two. We're going to record one that's vertical, and then we're going to record one that is like this, right? Where the phone is like this, right? The way you know what I mean. The breakdown on this video here, I had ChatGPT give me a rundown just because it was long. This video is over like a minute and 30 minutes, a minute and 30 seconds long. But at the end of the day, the benefits the benefits are the same, right? You're always mentioning the same thing. What's the value proposition? Hey, it's a cash offer. It's going to be easy. Zero commissions, no obligations, no repairs, etc. Calling out to the audience, and then no obligation, etc. Now we could use AI in order to create our ad copy. So this is ChatGPT. If you don't know what ChatGPT is, I don't know what to do with you, but we're gonna let that go. ChatGPT, you look that up on the internet. Don't put on the comments, Chico, what is ChatGPT? Never ask somebody what you could otherwise find on Google. I put on ChatGPT, I'm a real estate investor that is advertising for property owners that want to sell their property quickly for a fair price without fixing it up and want to avoid agents. Can you write me an ad for Facebook? Please include 3 headlines, 1 primary text. Please add emojis and write in the tone of the famous copywriter Gary Halbert. I put it in there because Gary Halbert was a copywriter and he had this way of writing that was kind of humorous, sarcastic, and it doesn't sound bland. So, hey, headline, that gives me the headlines, right? And then it gives me here, hey, savvy property owners, got a property that's seen better days, maybe at least some TLC, or you just want to cash out and move on with dealing with agents, open houses, or endless repairs. Here's the deal. I'm looking, and then you make an adjustment, right, to it. But, hey, this took less than, writing this up took me a minute, and then it gave me this, and you didn't have to think about it. Isn't that amazing? You can do the same thing with Google Ads. Can you write me 3 different ads? Now, in the same, once I did that, and it gave me this, then I'm piggybacking on the knowledge here and saying, hey, can you write me an ad for Google? And guess what it did? It wrote me an ad. It wrote me 3 headlines, and it wrote me a description that I can use for my Google pay-per-click campaigns. Look at that. That's amazing, isn't it? So now let's talk about converting leads, because that's another part of the equation and a very, very important part of the equation. Now, in the beginning with these platforms, right, Facebook and TikTok, they allow you to use their own internal lead collection system. And they're in Facebook they're called lead forms, and TikTok they're called instant pages. I just call them lead forms just because I forget which one is which. And Facebook came first. So a lead form is they click on the phone and they're on their phone. They click on the ad, and then they're gonna go ahead and let me see. Can I zoom out here? I don't think I can. And they'll fill in the information and they'll stay inside the platform. Right. The benefit is it's easy for you, quick for them, but it's a lesser lead quality than if you send them to a landing page. And I'll show you what one of our landing pages looks like. So with Facebook lead form here, we ask a variety of different questions. So we're more aggressive in asking more questions on the lead forms simply because we want to make sure we get a higher quality lead, or at least increase the lead quality. We ask like what type of property it is, if your property is listed with an agent, the type of renovations. We ask them for their asking price and their address, of course, phone, name, email, etc. And this is an example for TikTok, national property buyer. And then they put in what type of property they have, they put in the details, etc., and then that gets sent to us. Now we use I think I mentioned this before. Start with lead forms. I'm going to put in here need Zapier.com to send you the leads to your CRM or to your email, right? Now, the big boy club or the big girl club, I don't want to exclude the ladies, is a website, right? Now, I can tell you this. It's less important on Facebook and TikTok, but critical on Google. But like the majority of the clients and the students that we're working with, that we're helping them get like their first deal using these platforms when they've been struggling cold calling, shameless plug, but they start off with lead forms. So you could do deals with lead forms. I'm talking about this is like taking it to that next level. So let's talk about a couple of things. Number one, you should have a website anyway, and you should have a good domain. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. A good domain might be sell your house quickly today, although that's a bit of a mouthful, so I would rather it be less, right? So, for example, it could be, another good one could be sell cash buyer solution.com. It's probably not available. If it is, grab it, but something like that, right? Where it's easy to say, like cash buyer solution. This is Cris with cash buyer solution. If I say, hey, this is Cris with sell your house quickly today, it's a bit of a mouthful. If I said, hey, sell your, it could be, for example, you could play around with this and say another good one could be sell your, those are more difficult. Sell your, because a lot of those are used. House, could be one. Now, the .coms typically, well, first of all, like you don't want like Home Solutions LLC. I know that's your company, but don't have that as your domain. You want a domain that when you call the seller, you say, hey, this is Cris with houserescuetoday.com. They're like, okay, got it. Or with cashbuyersolution.com or whatever the domain is. And then you could use, it's okay to use .io, .expert, .online. There's a few other ones. And what I would recommend is you pick a domain that if somebody hears it, they're like, okay, I think I understand what you do. So there's no explanation, right? Make sure that it's not using like for you, like quick sale for you. Then you have to tell somebody, no, it's not the word for, it's I'd say the number, and it's not the word you, but it's actually the you, and then it becomes like really cumbersome. So you want something that when you tell them the domain name, they immediately know what you do, and then and also that it doesn't sound like a tongue twister, right? So you can also use .io, .expert, .online, and those would work. So, you want to just pick something that's descriptive and also say it out loud to make sure that it doesn't sound horrible. Now, the next layer is if you're going to have a website, you need something fast because a lot of these platforms, a lot of these people, when they hit the page and they click on the ad to hit the page, if your site loads slow, And the majority of the U.S. is not on super high-speed internet access like you and I might be on. They're slow. I mean, I got like I got 1 terabyte 1 terabyte download speed in my house, which I pay a pretty penny for, but that's not the majority of the U.S. So you need to have a fast loading website. And then with Google, they'll penalize you if you have a slow loading website. This is our website, which got an A in performance, meaning that it's super, super fast. And so we're going to make sure that you have that. This is what a sample of what our webpage looks like. It's nice and clean, simple, gets right to the point. And you'll notice there's a little widget there with a lady with a number 1 there. And so what happens is you can implement what's called a quiz funnel, and this is what we do on our leads. Where now we want to continue in the beginning. Like, you want as many leads as you can. You use the lead forms, but as you get more into this, then you want to try to do better. And so you can implement something like this. And then what will happen is that this is the software. You can go to flipanywhere.com/lead capture IO. If you use this link, then automatically, when you sign up for them, and you could use this with an existing website if you want. If you want us to build our website, you can always reach out to us, and we offer that as part of like the whole build out of these type of campaigns and the whole infrastructure. But if you then automatically, we will earn a small commission for that, so I have to disclose that. But it'll automatically give you our template, so that's a plus that you have, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So when somebody clicks on the button, this opens up. They put in the address as a Google autocomplete, so it starts to automatically autocomplete the address for them. And they click on the button that says start calculating your offer. And then they get a series of prompts. Like, for example, it'll ask them what type of property this is. And so we have conditional formatting here to eliminate unwanted properties. You could tweak this depending on what your business model is. But for us, like, for example, we'll do mobile homes. We make good money with mobile homes, but they must have the land included. So what will happen is if they click on mobile home, and the system will ask them, hey, do you own the land? And if they say, no, I don't own the land, then we say, hey, you better kick some rocks and get out of here, because we ain't going to do any business. So it basically says you don't qualify. The same thing happens if, for us, we don't do vacant land, so vacant land kicks them out. If you got the template through our link and you install this, then you can set that so that vacant land will be allowed, and they'll just come right through. The other ones that we have is, like, for example, if they have a commercial or storefront or something like that, we don't want any of that stuff, so we boot those out. So we don't want them. Also, we want to prevent the platform from getting a false positive, meaning that if you have a bunch of people that own mobile homes that don't own the land, and then you start getting a bunch of leads, and then it registers on the back end on the pixel that, hey, those are good prospects, and now they're going to send you even more of those, and we don't want those people. Now, this is an example of what we end up getting, and these are like recent leads that we got. So you can see here I blurred out the addresses, obviously, but they're all over the U.S. here. And then you can see here the prices that they're asking, the property type. Most of them are single family, the occupancy, owner occupied, vacant, and then the condition. And then there's the motivation. You can see all the different types of motivation: other, inherited, financial hardship, looking for a quick sale, etc. And the other question that we ask here is that down, as they get further along, is if the property is listed. If the property is listed with an agent, then we boot them out. I know some people will say, well, gee, you might get somebody and, they can cancel the listing and everything else. But yeah, it's like a needle in a haystack. We have so many other sellers that don't have the properties listed that we don't have to deal with any of that we would rather just boot them out. So that's what we do. Now let's talk about how to analyze ad performance. So say you set up these campaigns, or maybe you have us set them up for you. You get them going. And so what are the metrics? How do you know that these things are working properly? I have 3 different phases of metrics, right? Phase 1 metrics measure if what you're doing inside the platform is the right thing. So for example, if you say, hey, Chico, I'm running nationwide campaigns and I'm rocking it. And I'm like, okay, how much you paying per lead? And you say, oh, I'm paying $75 a lead. And I don't care if you're rocking it or not, but you're overpaying. It's like going to 7-Eleven and buying a Slurpee and saying that was the most amazing Slurpee. And I say, well, gee, how much you pay for that? And you say, well, I paid $30 every time I get a Slurpee. I'm like, you should probably be you're doing something wrong, because although the Slurpee's good, you're overpaying $30 for that. I'm not a Slurpee guy, but that's the best I could do right now. So, the big metric here is cost per lead. Are you getting the right cost per lead for the platform based on the targeting that you're doing, et cetera, right? So with Facebook is, hey, depending on the metrics, right? If you are advertising nationwide, if you're targeting states, or if you're targeting DMAs, they're all going to have their different price points. They're all going to be about the same, but want to make sure you're good on that. So that's number one. Number two, phase two metrics are subjective, meaning that, hey, are you getting the right leads, the right prospects, right? Because you could say, Chico, I am getting these leads for $5. I'm killing it. Facebook leads for $5. But then if we dig in and you're like, oh yeah, but they all want full retail price, they all have mobile homes, then it's like, okay, well, you're doing great with a cost per lead, but they're crappy leads. So in the end, it doesn't make any sense. So part of that is, or you might be slightly higher. Like you might have a campaign that's running and it's giving you leads at 35. And I'm telling you, hey, you should be at 25. But you might say, Chico, man, but these leads are amazing. I just put a deal on the contract. I got 2 other ones that are just amazing deals. So I say, don't touch it, because it is a little bit more expensive, not horribly expensive. You're not paying like $130 a lead. Then I'd say, well, look, the leads are good, but there's something wrong here. You're still overpaying. So we want to make sure that we are getting the right prospect and the right avatar. And then the final metric is what I call the one that in the end is the one that makes that matters, right? And that is, how much does it cost for you to get a contract? And how much does it cost for you to get a closed deal? And then what's your campaign ROI? The last two being the most important, right? Meaning that if let's suppose, for example, that I'm just using this as an example, that if you spent let's say you were spending $20 a lead and you got 50 leads. So that's an easy calculation. You spend $1,000. And let's say that it took you 50 leads because you're not that great on the phone. You need practice, et cetera, et cetera. So it took you 50 leads to get a deal. And our average deal size is 15K. So 50 leads, you got a contract, you got that contract assigned, you spend $1,000. Average deal size is 15K. Then that means that you spend $1,000 to make 15,000. Those are great numbers. So at the end of the day, it's what's the cost per deal, and then the campaign ROI, meaning that how much did you spend and how much did you make. Generally speaking, I mean the number as a baseline, bottom of the barrel would be like 4x. So 4 times you want to be at minimum, but ideally you want to be at somewhere around 7 or 8 or 9x in terms of how much you spend and then how much marketing, how much money you made out of that, right? And it'll fluctuate depending on the months, but at the end of the day, you need to keep an eye on that, because that's the main number. How much money you put in and how much money you get back out. Let's talk about some additional systems that you need, and just want to make sure we cover all bases here. Number one is you need a phone system. Now, you could use your cell phone to initially call and reach out to clients. They're warm incoming leads, so they reach out to you. And I would recommend you text them first and then you call them, so that way, like if you text somebody and says, hi Joe, this is Cris, Chico, or hi Joe, this is Cris, texting you about your property, want to get more details on it. And then if you call them, then the phone on the iPhone, I think it shows up as maybe Cris. So at least the name shows up versus spam likely. If you could use a separate phone system, I just put this one here as a potential option. I have no affiliation with them. There's different systems out there that you can make calls with. We use Follow Up Boss as our CRM, which has an integrated phone system. That may change. Just reach out to us if you're interested to know what our newest. That's a CRM that we use. So we have students that use that. It's really, it's built for agents. We customize it for us so that it works, but we do have SOPs and such on that too as well. If you also need a way to get organized on your leads. So I have a video on the channel that shows you how to use Trello as a CRM. And you could scroll down, just go to my channel, type in the word Trello, and then you'll find the CRM tutorial here. You click on that.
Are you a real estate investor, wholesaler?
And it'll show you how to use that particular CRM. That's a very cheap CRM. There's Follow Up Boss. There's a lot of other CRMs available out there. But if this is like the lowest cost, free version that you can put together, you can watch that video, put it together. And then you need Zapier. You need Zapier because Zapier is going to be the thing that pushes your lead from Facebook or any of the other platforms and pushes them out to everywhere they need to go. So those are the additional systems on top of everything that I just discussed here in terms of doing online lead generation. All right, so now you have the campaigns up and running, and now you're in the process of now receiving leads, and now you have to get to the next step. Now, the great thing about this is that once you set up all these systems, then they kind of run really without a whole lot of work required, right? Like I mentioned before, we have we have campaigns that have been running for weeks and weeks and weeks, and some of them months, and untouched, and they continue to bring in leads day after day after day. And so once that's already set up, now you need to do this work, which is leads are going to be coming in. So you should try to call the leads as quickly as you can. Now, if you're doing Google search, we just call it search here, then this is especially true because they're going on the computer typing in Sell My House Fast, filling out your form, but they're filling out other forms. Now, with Facebook and or TikTok, they're going to see your ad. They're not going to see potentially another ad right away. And so that means you have more time. So this is a positive. Now, the negative is because they're not an interruption, because it's an interruption-driven platform, unlike a search where they're sitting on the computer and they have made that decision that today they're going to figure out a way to get that property sold. So there's intention there, which means that then now, which is different than with the Facebook and TikTok, because they're thinking about it, but they weren't there just yet. So then now it's your job to follow up with them, which means that, if their priority level that day, your priority level every day is a 10 when it comes to you got to find a deal. But their priority level, like a PPC lead, they submit their information and they're right up there with you, right? So as long as you get a hold of them quickly before anybody else does, you'll get the deal. But a Facebook lead is like here. And so that modulates. So that means that they filled out the form today and you try to call them today. But they have other things, like the car broke down. They have a family member or the situation or whatever the case is, and so now you have to be aggressive in following up with them and getting them on the phone. And I say all that to say that the fact that they may not pick up right away, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. We've had people we followed up with for a week or 2 weeks, and then finally they pick up the phone and it ends up being a deal because now they were ready. So you never know what's going on in people's situation. Also, keep in mind is that for social media, unlike the computer where they're actually sitting in front of the computer or in a place where they're actually intending to type and take a particular action, with social media, they're browsing, which means that then now potentially they could have been sitting on the toilet for all we know when they submitted the information, and then now you're calling them and they can't pick up the phone. So the fact that they haven't picked up the phone right away as soon as you submitted the form, it doesn't mean they're not interested. It's your job to get a hold of them. So you want to try 5 to 7 times in the next 24 to 48 hours, consider, potentially twice daily. And by following up, I mean call, send them a text, call, send them a text. So you do both of those in an effort to try to get a hold of them. When you're calling them, I would call and let it ring, let it ring 3 times, hang up, call again. And then let it ring 3 times, hang up and call again. So you triple dial them, minimum double dial. If they say, what are you doing? You can always say, I didn't realize I called you 3 times. I thought my phone wasn't working. But since we're on the phone now, let's just have a conversation. You continue to call twice per day for the next 72 hours to either have them tell you to stop calling or texting, I made a mistake, or to be to at least initiate conversation with them, right? And again, remember that day, their priority may not be the same as yours in terms of wanting to sell the house and you wanting to buy it. And so you just got to follow up. Now the benefit is that on like a cold call lead, they submitted their information, so it's okay. They're waiting. They're expecting you to call. They just maybe not going to be able to field your call at this time. So as far as a daily routine, typically what happens is you have your campaigns running. You wake up in the morning and you have leads that will come in through the nights. So you call those new leads first. So you're always looking at whatever comes in, analyzing it. And, at any given day, you may have, like the campaigns modulate in terms of the actual, leads as they're coming in. And so then if I look at a campaign here, the last 14 days, and let's look at the last 30 days, you can see the leads coming in, right? You have leads coming in, 5, 4. This one's running at $75 a day. 6 leads, then no leads one day, then 4, then 1. So it just goes up and it goes, modulates like that, right? So what'll happen is that you always have leads coming in. So what we recommend is look at the lead first initially, and then determine really quickly if it's a viable lead or not a viable lead. Now in this video, I'm not getting into the actual property analysis methodology. So I'll have to do that in a separate video. Otherwise, this video could be 4 hours long if we get into that. But big picture is, out of 10 leads that you get, not all 10 are going to be viable leads. Your objective with this methodology is figuring out what are the top 2 or 3 opportunities and zero in on those, which means that you may not call or take a while to call other leads just simply because, of certain criteria, right? Could be property in the middle of nowhere. It could be that they're at, they put on the form a ridiculous price, and so you can know right away that they're just out of their mind, crazy, etc. But in the beginning of the day, you'll call whatever new leads have come in throughout the day. You'll call, keep an eye out on new leads as they come in. You're following up with hot leads, and then you have long-term follow-up, and then you have the leads that you have not been able to reach, the older leads. So, in any given day, you're going through this process here. Now, scripts and dialogues, very, very much you need to be following a script. Figure out the script that works for you, right? In the real estate space, there's quite a bit of people that teach scripting in terms of talking with sellers. Eric Klein, Arya Bates, Steve Trang. You got to figure out which one fits your mojo. And also where their leads are coming from, right? Because if you have somebody whose script is tailored around leads, but they get their leads through cold calling, then that script is going to have a different intent than an inbound lead script. But in big picture is you want to have a script and you want to have it memorized so that you're not worried about what you're going to say next. And so that, because if you're worried about what you're going to say next, you're not going to be listening to the prospect. And, you want to be in a position where you're listening to them and you're fully engaged in the conversation. The only way you can do that is because you have a script internalized and you know precisely the path you're going down. So that means that you don't have to worry about that in the back of your mind. You're not worried about, what am I going to say next? And you should be practicing your script daily, 15, 20 minutes before you get on the calls with sellers, just to make sure that, you're warmed up and you're going to have a good call, because it's like a football play, right? They practice, they warm up in the game, because when they get that ball and they haven't gotten the ball the whole game, but then they get the ball that's going to win the winning touchdown, they want to catch it. So you never know when that good lead is going to come in. And so you want to practice so that way when the lead that's going to make you 15 to 20K pops in the door, then you're ready for it. A good book recommendation would be Way of the Wolf. And Way of the Wolf talks about tonality, scripts, and mindset. It's a great book. I would recommend it. And, honestly, like I said, we could have an entire video just on the scripting and also on the property analysis, right? Because those are two things that are really, really critical. But here, we're talking about just how to talk to sellers. So then the next step is going to be negotiating with sellers, right? So we talk about the follow up and following the script, and then now, say you talk to a seller, you understand what their situation is, and now you have to make an offer. And when you're negotiating with sellers, you always have to keep in mind is that, and this is the mindset to have, in that you're never stealing anybody's equity. You're never doing anything that's a negative. What you're doing is you're giving sellers a second option, right? They never, they're not giving you their equity for free. They're trading their equity for something else. They're trading the equity for either speed, convenience, taking over the tenants, etc. So you have to figure out what their needs are and to be able to accommodate them. And like for example, when you're dealing with a property owner inside the property and they're living inside the property, then one of the negotiations could be, hey, would it help you if we actually bought the property, closed on it, then let you stay there a week to get your belongings? Now you have the cash in hand and you can go where you want to go next. Would that be helpful? Yes, of course. Then you can also make that part of the negotiation, part of the benefits of them selling the property to you versus a conventional, real estate agent. And got to keep in mind is this, in the model that we run here, it is a sifting and sorting versus a convincing model. So our objective is to generate a large number of leads and to give us the opportunity to sift and sort through those leads and find the best opportunities. We're not looking to twist somebody's arms or to use any particular sales negotiation tactic that is going to magically have somebody reduce their price. We're looking for reasonable people that know and understand that in order for them to sell to someone like us, they would have to give us a discount. And then we can, of course, do some small negotiation in an effort to get that price down and do the best we can. But at the end of the day, we're looking to be in a sifting and sorting business, not a convincing business. Because, biggest mistake that people make is that, not every lead can be a deal. And this happens all the time when when we do daily office hour calls with our clients. And what ends up happening is that, many times I tell them, this is not a deal. And they're like, well, how about this? And how about that? And I'm like, it's just not a deal. You got to move on and go to the next thing. You're holding on to this one. You've got leads coming in today. You've got leads coming in tomorrow. The right leads are going to come in. Let this one go. Move on to the next one, and just focus on. You got to focus on the few that make sense. If I ask you how many viable leads you have, and you tell me that you have 50 viable leads, I tell you, well, you only probably have 10 at the most viable leads, hot leads that maybe you could maybe do something with, but they're lost. They're lost in a sea of 50 that you think are deals. And eventually what will happen is that you'll get to the ones that are deals, and some of them will tell you that they already sold, and then you'll kick yourself in the pants because now you realize that you end up losing money because you're chasing way too many things. And there's also, I will tell you this, I don't have it here. I don't think I have it here, but in terms of other advice, I would say that I like to make an offer on the first call. And the reason for that is that if you have a seller, let's say, for example, that Zillow shows a value of $250K, right? So a couple scenarios that will happen and with sellers, right? You'll have a seller that wants $250K, or you have a seller that wants $265K. And in that scenario, it's, there's not really a negotiation. It's asking them if they understand what you do and your business model, just to make sure that they know that they need to sell us the property for less than what it's worth market value. So, a less than ideal would be that they're asking, say, either 250K, asking 265K, or maybe they're asking 230K, just because they're thinking, oh, just don't, I won't charge you the commission. And so now you get a better deal. But none of these numbers are going to make sense for us as real estate investors. So the question to that seller would be like, hey, just so you know, we're real estate investors, so we buy properties that need a lot of work and fixing up. And so therefore, we need to buy them below market value. And I always like to use the analogy, the story of a truck, and you can kind of use similar in that I had a truck that I needed to sell. I owned the truck fully outright. So I had an option of either putting it on Craigslist, but I needed to fix it up, put the new tires and everything else, and then eventually deal with a lot of people coming to me, and then eventually be able to sell that truck. But that I didn't want to do that. So I took it to the dealer. They wrote me a check. I knew that they were going to make money from it. I knew that they weren't going to give me the full market value, but I was perfectly okay with that. And so then saying to the seller, look, if you're looking for full retail value, you're better off going with an agent. If you're willing to consider selling below market and then trading that equity for something else, speed, convenience, and having to make repairs, then obviously we can have a conversation, but just being upfront with them. Now, in that scenario, so let's say, the majority of the deals we do, scenario would be a reasonable seller, right? So I would say this would be example one, would be a seller like this, right? So less than ideal, and this is what they're asking. Another example, which is more of is this. Example two would be Zillow is 250K, all right, and then the seller's asking 185K, right? So they're asking, or they might be asking 190 or 200. Let's say they're asking 200K. So now they're asking 50K below market. So then now at that point, we now have to then negotiate that down, but we're already starting at a deficit. So there's not that much ground. There's less ground to cover. And so let's say that Zillow says 250, they're asking 200. And we typically don't calculate values based on, a formula. Because we actually calculate with a calculator, like, okay, we've ordered for this is repairs that we estimate, etc. Then we come up with an actual number. But I'm going to come up with a number here on the fly, just for our purposes. So let's say that in this example, that it would be ideal for me to buy this property, have it on the contract for 175K, right? So the ideal is 175K. So then, in that scenario, for the purposes of explaining how to make an offer on the first call, is I could say to the seller, so that you have an initial offer, right? What's that initial offer? Initial offer could be, 150K. And however, you don't make them an offer. You explain to them your dilemma. And by that, I mean that, Mr. Seller, so let me ask you this. I know you're asking 200. Typically, the properties that we buy in this area, need work fixing up. And so we go in and we completely remodel them from beginning to end. So we just gut them and do everything. I'll have to input your information. I know that based on the properties that I have looked at recently, that maybe we have bought recently, similar type of properties to yours. I've seen the offers come in somewhere on the 150 range. Is that a number that you would consider? So again, you're not making them an offer directly, but you're saying, hey, here's kind of what I've been seeing, on our back end. And though likely you have to come up with a number they're going to say no. It cannot come up with a number that they're going to say yes to. It has to be a number that they're going to say no, because you need to have a low price anchor. So in that scenario, they say, no, I would never sell it for that price. Oh, no. And then your response is, oh, I completely understand, because those are for properties that need a ton of work and fixing up. Let me ask you this. Do you have any flexibility on that price? And they might say, maybe. I said, well, what could you do on that? And they might say, well, I'm willing to do 190. That's the best I can do. I said, no problem. I appreciate that. And let me do this, because I think that your property, from our conversation here, I think, it sounds like your property doesn't need as much work as some of the other ones. So I have to kind of, let me see what I can do. Let me ask you this, because I know that, and I appreciate you coming down to, I forgot even what I said in this video here, but let's say they went down to 190. Appreciate you coming down to the 190. Let me see what I can do. Again, I think that the 150 is for the ones that needed a gut job. So yours doesn't seem like it does. However, I'm not really sure that they'll be able to come up to that 190. Let me ask you this. If I got a number somewhere around 165-ish, and, again, it's all cash, close quickly, no closing costs or anything like that. Is that a number that you might consider? And again, now we're having that back and forth with them, but testing for price. And they might say, no, I want the 190. This is really what I want. That's the lowest I can go because of XYZ. I said, well, not a problem. Let me do this. Let me see what I can do. And then at that point, then what you've done in that conversation, you've at least gone back and forth, and at least now you've gotten some idea of better price points. And then, depending on your level, you could either do it right there on the call to come up with a number, or if you're brand new, you might say, hey, let me call you back. You do your research, call them back, and you say, hey, can we talk in another 15, 20 minutes? Let me see what I can do. And then you come back and try to get that final number accepted, right? And again, when it comes to negotiating with sellers, the book that I recommended, Straight Line, is it's a good book. The Way of the Wolf, which is his, he covers his straight line methodology. And I realized as I'm talking to you, that like literally I could do one whole entire separate video just on the whole negotiation, and another whole separate video on property analysis. But for the purposes of this video, I'm trying to keeping it somewhat high level, because we've covered a lot of ground already. I don't know how long this thing is running. So you want to make an offer on the first call, right? And at the end of the day, what we're looking for somebody who's already reasonable, who's already willing to sell at a discount, and we just need to get it a little bit less, or it might already be there. And so we might just, again, I'm a firm believer in that you got to at least ask for a discount, even if it's a good price, just to allow the seller to feel like, okay, it is a good price. Because if you say yes right away, you send them the contract, they're going to think, oh my God, I think I sold it for too little. So you want to be able to have some resistance there. And at the end of the day, say once you get the property negotiated with the seller, then at that point, then we want to get the contract signed by the seller. And we use a contract package that includes a cover letter, a contract, and some verbiage in terms of, hey, here's the reasons why you should do business with us, etc. And then important clauses and provisions are that the deposit is due after the inspection period. Closing date would be 30 business days. Inspection period would be 10 business days. We use 10 business days and we use business days because that automatically extends it, because now it's really like 45, calendar days for the closing and 15 calendar days for the inspection period. And now, the one important thing is, number one, we're using our contract. We use the same contract across all 50 states. So it's always the same. And it's always a good idea to try to see if you can get the seller to agree to get back on the phone with you. Now, there's a couple ways in doing that. A nice, easy way to get a contract is, let's say you talk to the seller and you say, hey, okay, so sounds like everything that we talked about, it makes sense. Your price, we're agreeing on price. Are you ready to go ahead and get the ball, move the ball forward and get the process going? And I say, yeah, 100%. Okay, no problem. I'll have to send you the agreement. Now, this depends on you. You should be able to be in a position where right away you open up your computer screen within a couple of clicks of the mouse, you'll be able to send them a contract. And then now you can just review it right there on the spot. If not, you can say, well, look, let's do this. Let's go. Can we get together again in about 30 minutes on the phone? And that way I can send you the agreement. We can review it and then make sure that everything's, we're both on the same page. Now they might say, well, I want to have a chance to review it first. So can you just send it to me and I'll review and I'll let you know. I said, listen, I would just say, that's certainly not a problem. I want to make sure that everything is clear on the contract, on the agreement. So, sometimes people are hesitant on getting on the phone with me afterwards just because they think that I'm going to be just like, just trying to be like trying to convince you to do something that you don't want to do. I just want to go over the entire agreement, clauses and provisions, make sure nothing sticks out as an issue with you. And then at the end of the call, you decide. If you said, hey, Cris, I just need 24 hours to go ahead and review it and make sure everything's okay, not a problem. If you're ready to go right then and there, you might say, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and do it, and we'll do it. But it's really your option. I just want to have the opportunity to make sure that no stone is left unturned and that you understand all the clauses and provisions and there's nothing in there that's going to be a stickler for you, which, we use the same agreement across all 50 states with all of our clients, so we never really have any issues. But I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And also, it's important to, as I talk to you about this, I'm like, man, we could do a whole video on each of these. Let the seller know that it's not a done deal until after the inspection period. And by that meaning that, because once you say from looking at the chronology of things, you negotiate the price, you draw out the agreement, you review it with them, you send them the agreement, and then now you review it. Now you sign it. Now it's a done deal. So then now you have to prep them for what's next. And what if the owner says, because I don't know if I covered it here, let me see what other section here, how to find the properties, how to find the buyers. So, sometimes at this stage here, on how to talk to sellers, the question will come up with them, or maybe around here, a question will come up of, how can you buy the property without ever looking at it? I don't get that. Don't you need to take a look at it? So the answer is, we buy properties all throughout the country, and the only reason we're able to do that is because in each of these, many different towns, small towns, big towns, we have investor partners. And what they do is they help us in funding the deals, but also as well as being our boots on the ground and dealing with all the contractors and everything else. So the way it works is that we'll be able to give you here with us an offer that is pretty much 99.9% a sure deal. When is it not? When there's a big discrepancy in terms of the condition of the property. If you told me that the property is in amazing condition, we go there and there's a meteorite last night that went through it and there's a big hole in the roof, we're going to say, well, it's not the same as you mentioned it to us. So we're going to have a problem with that. So as long as the property is in the condition that you mentioned to me and that we've discussed, it's not going to be a problem. And then our boots on the ground will look at it, confirm that, and will give us a thumbs up and say, yeah, not a problem. We can handle everything that's required on this property. So that is something that will come up. If it doesn't come up, then you'll have it come up here because you have to explain to them that, look, so we just want to make sure we get past that, get to that stage of our investor partner taking a look at it and giving us a thumbs up. So between now and then, I don't want you to put up any deposits or anything like that where you're going to next. We'll get that done as quickly as we can within our inspection period. And then I'll tell you, hey, everything is a done deal. And then I've sent the file over to the title company. I'll put you in contact with the title company, which means that then now you have certainty that, yeah, we're moving ahead and all we got to do is make sure that there's nothing on the title, any liens that you haven't told me about or anything like that. But other than that, we're good. So you want to be able to tell them, hey, until I tell you that we're 100% done with the inspection, don't do anything, because you don't want them putting deposits on properties and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I thought we had a done deal. I put a $3,000 deposit on a rental, and now you're telling me you can't do the deal, and you don't want that. In terms of digital agreements, we use PandaDoc in terms of sending agreements. DocuSign is also an option. I just found that PandaDoc is more. I found it easier, and also I found it to be more economical. But it doesn't really. There's a bunch of other platforms available. So if you have something already now, just use that. Sometimes, occasionally, very, very occasionally, we might have an offer that wants an actual contract physically sent to them because they don't have a mobile phone, which is kind of weird. And then what you'll do is you'll send them the contract agreement, and you'll send them the agreement and two copies of it. Both of them you sign. So when you send a contract to the seller, it's perfectly okay for you to sign first, but never okay for you to sign first when it comes to a buyer. I'll cover that in a second. So you're sending the agreement, 2 copies, one signed by you, both of them signed by you, and instructions for them to sign both. Keep one, so that would have a fully executed contract. And then the other one, you provide a priority mail envelope already pre-addressed to you so that they can just slip it in there, send it back to you, and that's it. That's so infrequent nowadays that happens where they need to send something by snail mail. Typically doesn't happen. Now, a thing that comes up is how to get photos of the property. So in terms of the photos of the property, we could do a couple things. Now, first of all, do not ask for the photos of the property ahead of time. Don't make getting photos of the property an obstacle course for the seller before getting your contract signed. And I've seen this happen many times because you feel like you need the photos in order to make an offer because you need to know what the repairs are. You don't really. You could just do it based on what the seller tells you about the property. And then you can kind of see what the comps are in the area to know what the general condition of properties in that area are, similar to the subject property. And but you don't, because what will happen is that you'll say, hey, get me photos, and they can't operate their phone, or they have some technical difficulties, and then it takes 2 days, and before you know it, another investor comes in, and then now you got a competition. You never had competition before. So you want to get the property signed up. Once you get the property signed up, in our contract package with the seller, we provide instructions and on how to get the photos taken of the property. So once we get the contract signed, to get the photos, either the seller can take photos of the property for us, especially if they live at the house. They can just take it with their cell phone and then have them email you the photos, not text message, because then the text message will degrade the photos. And then we typically take those photos, put them on a Google Drive, and then allow that, and then that way we could share the photos with investors as we are showing them the deal, right? Because a lot of times they will want to see photos of the property. Now, if we're not able to get the seller to take photos of the property for us, or maybe they don't live there, maybe it's vacant, whatever, then typically we use HomeJab, sometimes BPO PhotoFlow. BPO PhotoFlow has less coverage than HomeJab, and then HomeJab, the pricing depends on the location of the property. If it's in a fairly populated city, then we can get a lower price, and if it's a rural area, which they'll have to charge us a little extra for that. And also depends on the property itself. If we got a really good deal, we might just do a video too as well. Make it a couple $100 to get some really great photos in the video, because then that's going to help us in selling the property. But we know it's a sure deal. So if it's a maybe deal for you, then it's something where you may not want to spend the extra money. You just want to get the basic package. Sometimes you can't find somebody because of the location, which might be a red flag if it's too far out where nobody wants to go and take photos, and it might just be too small of a market. But you can certainly put on Craigslist, put an ad on OfferUp, Thumbstack. I think that's what it's called. Put an ad there, and you get a photographer to take photos, and you want them to take, interior. You tell them, hey, I need a picture of the front of the house from the street. I need a picture of the street. I need a picture of each side of the house from outside. Then I need you to go into each room and take a photo of the kitchen. I want to make sure I see the kitchen cabinets. I want to take a picture of all the bathrooms, make sure I see the sink and the vanity. as you're going through the photo, as you're going through the property, if you see a hole, you see something that looks like a weird thing that, oh, that could be a problem, then I want you to take a picture of it. And so when in doubt, take more pictures than you need, and then they could send you the pictures through, through Dropbox. They could, text it to you. If they're going to text you the photos, as long as they're an iPhone device, that'll work. But or they would do WhatsApp. WhatsApp would give you good photo quality. If they're an Android and they're sending you photos, those photos may not translate back and forth depending on your device. So those are things you have to work through. Um, and then now we have the property and the contract. And then how are we going to find the buyers for that? So, the majority of the time we're using, this is our primary tool, Investor Lift. If you you can get a 10% discount if you go to this flipanywhere.com. That's our domain, and you go here. There's two links. You can get a sign up link for Investor Lift and a trial of Investor Base. This one you can get a free trial for a few days with our link, and then this one you can get a discount off of their purchase with our link. We do make a small affiliate commission, but we use that tool, so we would recommend that tool regardless. I'm a customer of the tool. It's definitely like Investor Lift. It's a 5-figure investment. Could be more depending on the level. We have one at the higher levels, and so it might be a little bit. If you're brand new in the business, you don't have that much money. You got to spend the money on marketing, so that's a priority. There's a lot of features inside of it, including the ability to send SMS and emails, and I see active buyers near the property that you have. But if you're limited on the budget, then you might want to start off with Investor Base, which ends up being significantly less. You have to do a lot more legwork because they'll give you all the information, but you got to do skip tracing and/or find the people. So it's a lot more slower, less robust process, but still viable. But again, if you're limited on your budget, this would be the only option, with the intent that you would eventually be able to upgrade and get Investor Lift. And Investor Lift is the number one tool that we use in order to find our buyers. Investor Base also works as a comping tool, so you can use it as a tool to figure out, okay, what are investors buying in the area, in terms of their, how much of percentage of ARV they're buying, etc. So it does come in handy for us too as well, to give us an idea. But when it comes to property analysis, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but our primary tool is Zillow. Yeah, I hear talk about. Okay, so I don't technically have a section here in property analysis, but we use Zillow for the most part. I would say 95% of the time we're using Zillow in order to analyze a deal. Now, we get photos of the property, we find the buyers, and then in terms of assigning the deal, I think this will be the last section, and closing the deal here. In terms of assigning the deal, don't post the address publicly. Don't give the address. Speak with the buyers first. So you want to try and speak to the buyers. Well, first of all, we do our best to focus on buyers that are used to dealing with real estate investors. We want buyers that are that know the game, that are okay with paying assignments, that are going to be closing with cash or hard money, because we don't want any problems with the transactions later on, right? Because you can go out to Craigslist and find a buyer that's going to pay you like $5,000 more than, say, another buyer who's experienced, but then that deal blows up at the last minute. Now you got a big hairball of mess because the seller has their stuff moved out. They're expecting to move to the next property, and it becomes problematic. So I'd rather sell a property for a little bit less money, but have a real estate investor that knows what they're doing and they're not going to blow up the deal. In terms of, so let's say you communicate with the buyers, you figure out with them, hey, have you purchased from other investors before? Are you familiar with assignments? We want to make sure we close on, with cash or hard money. And they're like, yeah, no problem. What you want to hear is them saying, not a problem. I work with real estate investors, real estate wholesalers all the time. And I love buying properties from you. That's what you want to hear. Then the next thing would be showing your deal. So, you're going to schedule an appointment. You're going to tell the seller, hey, we need our investor partner in the area to take a look at the property. And you can always say to the seller, look, we're going to try to make this a 1 or 2 shot deal, right? But sometimes, we might have a partner that just doesn't feel comfortable with the amount of repairs and fixing up that's required on the property, or maybe whatever the situation is. And so we might have to get a couple of people out there, but we try to minimize the inconvenience around that. So you let the seller know that, hey, we're going to have Joe Smith, our investor partner in the area. He's going to go take a look at it, confirm the repairs, the condition of the property. He might ask you some questions when he gets here in terms of anything he spots. And then from there, then hopefully if everything's okay, then I'll give you the go ahead and let you know that we've sent the file over to the title company. That's what you would tell the seller. So with regards to the buyer, we just let them know that, hey, they should know this if you're dealing with the right buyer. Like, hey, you can ask any questions to the seller. Obviously, you're not going to have a discussion on price because you're buying the property from me through the assignment of contract. But I've explained to the seller that you are our investor partner, so you're going to be funding the deal. And you need to make sure that, hey, the repairs and the condition are exactly what we said it was. So if you spot something on the property that looks odd, then just ask them, hey, what's that hole in the roof? What's this over here? Whatever. I want to make sure that you get your questions answered so that if it's a viable deal, then it's a good deal for you. The other thing is also, just kind of asking the buyers about pricing. And by that, I mean that you would tell the buyers, like, look, I just, do you feel that, this is, you show them the picture. This is where the pictures come in handy, right? Because if you show them the pictures and then you have a discussion and they know what you're asking on the property and the assignment, then at that point, then it shouldn't be a waste of time for them to go see the property. Like, you don't want somebody going to see the property and them in their mind thinking they're going to lowball the crap out of you, and then you're not going to be able to make any money from it. I realize also, again, when the scope of this video, I'm trying to pack so much into this video, but I realized that then also we didn't discuss what you should be asking, to try to make on a deal. And that's part of property analysis. But big picture, our target is, somewhere we're always targeting trying to make $25K on a deal. Sometimes we get that number, sometimes we get less. But when it comes to negotiation and with the seller, we're trying to negotiate a price from the seller that will give us a $25K spread on a deal that we could make, and then the investor buyer would be able to make a decent amount of money too, and everybody win-win, and it's a win-win for everybody. Once an investor buyer takes a look at the property, and then at that point, then you can have a negotiation with negotiation with them. Negotiation with them is typically easier than, say, with the seller. They're less emotional about it. They're more looking at the numbers. And if you do talk to a buyer and they say, no, it's not a deal for me, maybe they see the pictures, or maybe they saw the property. It's always a good idea to find out why. So why is it that you're not interested? They might tell you, oh, that property is in the worst area of town. I would never buy anything there. Well, that's good for you to know, because maybe you didn't know that. Because when we're doing it virtually, there's certain things that we don't know and we can't discern when we're doing that. And so then now, as a result of that, it helps to know that information. If a buyer says they don't want the deal, then you also want to ask them, well, is there a number that you would want the deal at? Because maybe you're asking too much for it, and they might say, well, if I could get it for 80, I would take it. And what if you have it on the contract for 90? So you can't sell it to him for 80 because there's no spread in there for you. But you might be able to go back to the seller and get the property renegotiated with the seller, and then at that point, then now you do a deal. So we do that all the time in order to say so by asking the buyer, what would you pay? Then at least now and if you say you talk to 3 buyers and they all say, well, we pay 80, and another one says I'll pay 82, and another one says I'll pay 79, then guess that what that means? That means that that's a value. And if you have it on the contract at 90, you're not going to make any money because you don't have enough spread. So that means you got to go back to the seller. And in that scenario, you could go back, you would ask the buyer, I said, well, let me ask you this. If I can go back to the seller and get a price reduced in order for you to be able to buy it at 80, is that a number that you would be, that you're ready to go? Because I will try and get I'm going to go back to the seller and try and see if I can get a price reduction, put in a little money for me and the rest for you at that 80. If I can get that done, would you be ready to go? And then if they say, yeah, 100%, I'll be ready to go. You get it. You get me the deal at 80. And you just tell me we'll get a deposit going and we'll get this thing closed. That's what you want to hear. And now you're going to go back to the seller, and you would say to the seller, look, I got good news and bad news. The good news is that we're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll, sending this over to the title company. The bad news is, or not so, kind of where I need your help in, is that they came back with that they need an adjustment. They need an adjustment because it's more work than we thought it was going to be. and the funding is saying, hey, we can't, we you got to be able to, we need it at a lower price in order for them to feel comfortable knowing that we have enough spread that if repairs take too much or too long, then we're still going to be covered. We're not going to lose any money. So they came back to you with a number. They came back with a number, which I was disappointed. So you got to come back to them with a low anchor. And let's say the buyer wants it at 80, you have it at 90. You're going to go for, a good price reduction. So you're going to try to, you might go back and say, they came back to you with a number of 60,000 and say you had a contract at 90. They're like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to do that. I know it's a steep number. And that's what they came back to me. And, I want to talk to you first before I go to them. Do you have any flexibility on the 90? Because we're pretty much ready to go. We can have this thing closed in a couple of weeks. And they might say, well, look, I can do 80. I said, then you would say, okay, let me talk to them. Let me see what I can do. If I can get like 75, if I can get them, like maybe they go like 75, 74, would you consider that? And then it might say, fine, if you can get me 76, I'll take it. But guess what? You just made yourself a 14K spread. Good enough. You then go back to you just tell the seller, okay, let me just make sure that I understand. If I can get them to go with 74, then I'm going to push on them, but I want to make sure before I push on them that you're okay with that number. That if I can get them to do 74, then you're ready to go. And the seller says, yeah, I'm ready to go if they can do 74. Great. And then you could then call the seller back and say, I'm excited. I was able to get them to do 74. I'm going to send you an addendum of contract for you to sign. Then you get the price adjusted. Then you get the buyer to take the 80. So now you're doing an assignment of contract. So you made yourself 14K. Happened to us recently in a deal in Florida where we had to go back to the seller and renegotiate because the pricing was not what we thought it was going to be in that area. The mobile home it had the land, but the mobile home was built pre-1973, which made it difficult to finance it or almost impossible to finance. So it became difficult, and there was no well water. And so the buyer said, hey, I got to dig a well from scratch. That's going to cost me $7,500. So we said that to the seller. We got to dig a well. It's going to cost $7,500. We didn't expect that. And the seller was reasonable. They're like, okay, what is it going to take? We're almost there. And we made the deal, and we ended up going from making no money, or maybe at the price that the buyer was willing to pay for it. And we were only going to make like a couple $1,000s, and then we ended up making 12K. So that was good, right? And then we get an assignment of contract with the deposit. And then 2 deposits, one for the original contract and one for the assignment. So if you have the agreement with the seller says you put up $100 or $500 after the inspection period, and you get the buyer to agree within the inspection period to buy the property from you, then you just don't want to get a $500 deposit from the buyer. So let's say in this scenario, and again, it depends on the price point of the property, but let's say the price point of the property is a couple $100,000, so you might want to get a 5K deposit, so you'll get $5,500. $500 goes toward the seller original contract, and $4,500 goes toward your assignment of contract. So you want to get a big deposit from the buyer, making sure that you're covered on that. And then, and again, that could depend on the price of the property. Could be anywhere from a couple thousand. If you got a crappy property in the middle of nowhere and they're buying it for 25K, it's going to be hard to get 10K deposit from them. But, I would always ask for a minimum of 5, if not, settle on 2 or 3. But it also depends. If you got everybody and their mother, wanting your property, then you can stand firmer on your deposit requirements. But if you have a situation where you got a deal that's the biggest turd that you've ever seen in your life, and nobody wants it, and now this one buyer wants it, but he's like a stickler about the deposit. He says, "Look, I'm going to close, but I'm not going to give you any more than $1,000." And maybe that's the only thing you can get, and you're like, okay, let's roll with it. Let's see if we can make it happen. So, there's a lot of nuances. Funny, as I go through this, I may have to do, and this, we'll have to see how long this video is, but I have to do a version 2 of this video that's even longer, just to cover all the nooks and crannies. Eventually, this video will be like 8 hours long, okay? And you'll sit there and you'll watch it, and you'll be like, man, this guy's good, but I'm tired of listening to Chico for that long. So let's talk about how to close a deal. So, title company. Title company is, by the way, make a comment. Tell me if you I guess I would have to assume that you would want me to do one on those other things that I didn't get a chance to cover, which is on the property analysis, which would be another probably hour and a half video. How to close a deal. A title company. We try to, if we're dealing with an investor that already knows what they're doing, then we're just going to ask him, like, okay, what title company do you recommend or do you use in your local area? And they'll say, we use John Smith at whatever. And then you are going to get the phone number, call them and say, hey, John, I'm working with Richard and we got a deal together, assignment of contract. I just want to just confirm with you. Are you familiar with assignment of contracts? Done those deals before? And you want to hear, yeah, no problem, all the time. Although sometimes they say that, and then when you get down to it, they're like, did we have like a weird conversation at another dimension? Because you told me that you knew what this whole thing was, but now it's like you don't know what you're doing. It seems like, right? Because when you look at the HUD statement, you're looking at it, and you're like, do you even know how to put this thing together? So it's kind of weird. But anyway, you figure out the title company and you want somebody local. I find that it's better to have somebody local because then they know all the nuances of that particular area, the municipalities in case they need to get lien letters and all this other stuff, and be able to make sure that they can close the property correctly. And what you want to do is then you're going to send the title company and you're going to send the title company the contract, the original contract that you have with the seller. You're going to send them the assignment of contract that you have with the buyer. And then you're going to send them the seller's information. So you're going to call the seller, give the seller the title company's information, get the contact information to that person and say, hey, you need to reach out to this person to give them all your details and just chat with them. If they have a mortgage, they need a mortgage statement to that way. And you need to tell the title company, hey, they got a mortgage. Here's a mortgage company statement they sent me. So that way they can call and get a payoff, etc. And then you also want to follow up during the closing. One thing you want to make sure of is that as you're working through this process, right? You don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to get a hold of the seller, and you spend all this time to get the contract signed, and then once you get the contract signed, you're trying to sell it, but then you don't communicate with the seller for like a week. That's not good. You always want to have constant communication with the seller, because that's when sellers think, oh, I guess they're not going to buy the property anymore, and then they go sign with somebody else, and then now you got another problem. So you don't want that to happen. So throughout this process, you're getting a hold of the seller, you're communicating with them, letting them know what's happening. The same thing with throughout the closing. You want to follow up with them, let them know that that you're following along, you're trying to get this closed within the next couple of weeks. Wondering if they spoke with the title company. If they haven't, not a big deal. They may not need something from you right now, etc. And just making sure that they know that you're working on this. And then closing the deal. I like to request the title company to send me the HUD before anybody else sees it, because sometimes they'll mess it up. Sometimes they'll put, like if the property original purchase price is 100 and then you're assigning it for 120, the actual price that should be on the HUD is the 100, and then the 20 is an additional closing cost to the buyer. But sometimes they will put the purchase price as 120, which means that then the seller will look at that and say, oh, I thought I sold the property for 100, and so it causes confusion, etc. You don't want that. You want the 20K to be shown as an addition to the buyer's side, so it's a closing cost. If for any reason the seller might, and they never really do, if a seller will look at the HUD statement and say, I don't understand, what's this assignment fee to this buyer? I said, well, that's how we do it. It's our funding partner, so we kind of do it, structure it this way, so we can take some additional money at closing, so we can use that for closing cost repairs, etc. So that's how we structure the deal. So it kind of correlates with what you told them already with regards to them being your funding partner, which is true because they're the ones that are funding the deal. They're the ones that are closing. And so that's how we do it. But we want to make sure we look at the HUD, make sure everything is correct. Also, when we are closing on the property, and as part of our agreement with the seller, we're telling them that we're paying for all the closing costs. So that means that then on the HUD statement, seller doesn't have any closing costs outside of their tax prorations and or payoff of any liens or encumbrances. So therefore, you would look over that, and make sure everything's correct. Because at the end of the day, what you want is to be able to tell the seller, we said $100,000. They did a tax proration of $300 for taxes, and then your mortgage payoff was $55. So subtracting those two things, your total amount that you're going to get from the title company is $68,475. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And said, they'll be like, how do I get my money? I said, well, coordinate with the title company. They could, do a variety of different things, but typically they're going to want to wire you the money. So they'll get your bank account information, get everything settled with you, and get your, and figure all that stuff with you. We're going to bring the money to them by wire, and then they will go ahead and disperse to you. So that's how you handle it. You go over the numbers with the sellers, and you confirm the dates and follow up and make sure everybody shows up, at the end of the day. Nowadays, most of these transactions, obviously with the buyer and the seller, are all virtual. A lot of times we're dealing with inherited properties where the sellers are not living at the property or nearby anyway. So everybody's pretty much used to doing things virtually, not like I was back in the days when I first started in 2005, where you have to navigate with the seller and the buyer, and you want to make sure that we want the buyer to show up first, sign all the docs, bring his money, and then the seller comes in. We want them showing up at different times because they'll be together. Now everything is virtual, so it's completely different. So there you have it. I've gone through the entire nationwide wholesaling model. Now, obviously, there's parts that I wasn't able to dig into. So what I want to know from you is specifically, what is it that I missed, that I didn't dig into, that you would say, Chico, I would love it if you did a video on that and dig in even further to help you. That's number one. So make a comment about that. Number two, let me know if you found this video helpful. Number three is also if you want help in putting this infrastructure in place for your Facebook ads and making sure that everything is running, that you're getting leads, and even getting some help with your leads, we help be more than happy to partner with you on the leads and even help you sell them. Reach out to us. Link in the description. We're more than happy to tell you how we can help you with that and see if we might be able to work together. And also making sure that you watch one of these other videos that will pop up here, because there's going to give you some other advice that I didn't get a chance to cover in this video.